Welcome to Smart Route, the podcast by CallTrackingMetrics, where you'll hear stories from businesses at the intersection of marketing, customer experience, and sales. We're sitting down with business leaders and industry experts to dive deep into the path they took to find success. Here are your hosts, Brandon Jordan and Peter Bacon.
Thank you, everybody, for joining us today on CallTrackingMetrics Smart Route podcast. Today, we have our guest is Aslam with Solutions 8. He's here to talk to us about all things Google, AI, pricing, all that kind of stuff. Our co-host also is Brandon Jordan. Brandon and I are sharing the responsibilities of bringing these podcasts to you.
What's up? What's up, everybody? How you doing?
And we thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, guys. I'm excited.
Definitely happy to have you, man. We had a chance again. We've connected before. I'm really excited to speak with you, and I know we talked a little bit about the AI, so we definitely want to get some great feedback there. You are a Google Ads and Analytics master, right? So definitely very interested in picking your brain and being able to have some really good conversation around those topics there. So I think a great way to really kick off things. Just tell us a little bit about yourself and your journey to becoming like a top Google Ads thought leader. Like, what was that like? How'd you start? What was the process like? And then how did you get where you are now?
I started my business, dude. It's almost been 20 years. That makes me feel so old.
20 years.
Yeah, I started my business in 2006. So not quite 20 years, but approaching that mark.
Okay.
Like it's a rounding error.
Yeah.
And I started building software. That's where the genesis was. And I built software just because there was money in it. I had no passion for it at all. I didn't like it. I wasn't good at it. But I was a young man, and I just thought like money. I'm going to get money.
That's
And
right.
I did for a little bit. Like, it was a pretty easy epoch at the time. I was building banking applications, and I was actually building banking applications for the bank that brought down Lehman Brothers. If you've ever seen The Big Short,
Wow. Absolutely.
That movie is about one specific bank that was based here out of Arizona. They never say the name of the bank, but I was building software for that bank. I was in the bank on Bank Failure Friday when the FDIC pulled in their big black SUVs and started kicking down doors.
I remember that scene.
My whole world collapsed around me. And the thing about software, enterprise software specifically, that most people don't know is, generally speaking, at least at the time, you'd get a very small nominal deposit, like 5% up front. And then the remainder was paid over milestones, generally on the back end. And so you could have a 2-year build where you're just not going to get paid until the latter half of the development process, the development cycle. And
Sure.
And the bank, my biggest client, had just been captured, let's say, and I'm at the absolute bottom of any level of receivership. So I just wasn't going to get paid. So I had to pivot.
Wow.
And so software led to websites, and from going from software to web is like the cook washing dishes. That's how it felt to me at the time. Because I was arrogant. So I was 20 when I started my business. So I was just like, I can't believe I've been relegated to this. But dude, I was annihilated. I lost everything. My house was foreclosed on. My car was repossessed. I had to fire everybody who worked for me. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me entrepreneurially. And if you're listening to this and you're an entrepreneur, sadly, it would appear as though we are moving into a macroeconomic cycle that is going to be difficult to traverse. And I'm here to tell you, I'm the graybeard. I've done this once before, and I don't know what happens, how it happens, but it does feel like a axiom at this point. Like, I don't think we're going to avoid some level of correction, and it's going to be hard, and it's going to be stressful, and it's going to be the most important, best thing that's ever happened to every entrepreneur, especially young entrepreneurs, because making money when money's flowing is easy. You can do it by accident. Making money when money begins to be efficient, which is what happens in down markets, that's a sign that you actually have something. And learning to build a business in this environment means that you're actually going to have a business that can grow and scale. And that's what happened to me. I was forced in a position to where I really needed to provide value, leverageable value.
Right.
And dude, it was the best thing that ever happened to me in my entire life. I learned the value of money. I learned, most of what you think you own, the bank actually owns.
That's right.
And that was the segue. And so, web became marketing, marketing became paid ads. And I was dragged along kicking and screaming too. It was my business partner that identified Google Ads as being like the catalytic event for all of our clients. We were doing full funnel marketing, and he's the one that was like, dude, everybody who's successful with us is successful in Google Ads first. And that makes a lot of sense because what I'm doing is I'm taking my client and I'm suiting them up. I'm putting a sword in their hand. I'm throwing them in the Coliseum, and I'm like, can you survive? And Google is it's the great equalizer because somebody's searching for what you sell. And if it doesn't sell, that's what's really funny about it, man. I love it when people are like, oh, I'm going to go test Google Ads. No, you're not. Google's going to test you. Like somebody goes to Google and says, I want to buy this thing right now. And then I put them in front of your thing and they didn't buy it. Whose fault is that? You know what I mean? Like I brought the horse to water. The horse didn't drink. You've got poisoned water. Like there's something wrong. Your offer is wrong. The articulation of the offer is wrong. The pricing is wrong. The terms are wrong. The product is something's wrong. So I love Google for that reason. I'm not going to tell you it's the end all, the be all. I run a Google Ads agency. I own one of the top Google Ads agencies in the world, or I did until I sold it in October. And Google isn't my number one lead acquisition.
Congratulations, by the way.
Yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Google's not in my top 3 lead acquisition tools personally. And we spend $200,000 a month in Google, but where it's not the best or the most important, it's the first. It's where you can see, in this commoditized ecosystem, in this competitive environment where markets are efficient, can I compete? And if the answer is no, that doesn't mean give up. It just means, okay, you have a data point that lets you know here at the extreme bottom of the funnel, you're never going to make ends meet. So you have to go get creative. That was a bit of a departure from your question, but feel free to cut around.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. And you see me. I'm listening. I'm taking it all in because I think everybody needs that motivation, right? Especially you talked about the possible correction that we may have to deal with, and in checking your offer, right? Anybody can make money when revenue when the money's flowing, right. But you really test yourself, test your offering when that correction comes. So no, I appreciate it. It's definitely right on track. Speaking of the economy, right? Everyone's saying these days in this economy, like as a joke, but the economy and our budgets are really top of mind for so many of us, right? So as the cost of ads really keep going up. And then there's more competition in just about every industry. So could you just kind of share some of like your own business hacks for keeping ad costs low without sacrificing results in the economy or in this economy particularly?
Well, so my response is going to be petulant, Brandon. I hope you'll forgive me.
Okay.
Trying to keep ad costs low is trying to keep the price of stocks low. You can't do it.
There you go.
You can't do it. Like what you have to do is you have to build your business around what the prices end up being. It's an organic ecosystem. If people are willing to pay this amount of money for this inventory, that's what that inventory is worth. And so, people come to me and say like, oh, the inventory is too expensive, or, impressions are too expensive, clicks are too expensive. No, they're not. They're exactly as expensive as they should be based off of an organic ecosystem. If we're good capitalists, if you and I have both read Adam Smith and we subscribe to this mark, whether or not you like it is a whole other story, but this is the philosophy. Yeah. This is the ethos. This is the foundation upon which all of us have to live. It's like saying it's too hot outside. What does that get you? What are we talking about here? You know what I mean? Still, if we got to break bricks and it's too hot outside, well, no, it's not. It's how hot it is. So now, do we find an umbrella? Do we move inside? Do we get air conditioning? Because you're not going to block out the sun. The price of traffic is the price of traffic. Now, we can have a whole discussion about traffic on the periphery and moving up the funnel and finding, cheaper traffic, but that's actually not. That's a different topic of conversation, right? Because that traffic is still what that traffic costs. You're trading time for money. Because if you go up higher in the funnel, now you have to spend time dragging somebody down in the funnel. If you go on the periphery, now you have less traffic and it's less available. So traffic costs what traffic costs. The key is, number one, knowing your numbers. And I'll give you a really good example. My business partner owns equity in a company that at present spends $30 to get a $30 client. They spend $30 and they get a client that pays them $30. And you think to yourself, dumbest business in the world. But nay, sir.
Break even.
Here's what's interesting. Those clients, from a lifetime value perspective, are probably worth, and it's a relatively new company, but from a business model perspective, they're probably worth about $1,500 because it's a consumable industry and they know their numbers. So they know, hey, I can spend $30 in ads and somebody will pay me $30. And now what's really interesting about that, when you think about it, is that's a free client, right? Spent 30, They paid 30. I'm
Yep.
actually, like you
Yep.
just said, break even. So I can scale
It
that
breaks
business to the
even.
moon without running into cash flow issues. And the lifetime value of the client is disproportionately large. It's a
Yeah.
phenomenal business to be in. But so many small business owners who have their $30 product would be like, oh, I'd never spend $30 to get $30. I need to be profitable. And where we get really, really interesting is when you have and I've seen this frequently as markets get more sophisticated. You have businesses that will spend $500 to sell $30, knowing that the lifetime
Wow.
value on a long enough timeline is 1,000, 1,500, 2,500, 50,000, whatever it ends up being. You see this in insurance. The amount of money people will come to me. We have 200 clients across 150 some odd industries, and so I see a lot of the same. Residential realtors are clients I'll never take. General dentistry is clients I'll never take. But people selling life insurance, it's such a travesty, dude, because the amount of money that life insurance salespeople make on one policy is zero adjusted for margin of error. It's absolutely nothing. And what they don't realize
Wow.
is the big insurance companies are willing to pay 10 times what they make on that policy because they know if I get your life insurance, I'm going to get your home, your auto, your umbrella. And so there's when you're dealing in efficient markets like that, it's not that the traffic is expensive. It's that your model is inefficient. So what we need to do is we need to
Mm.
find a more efficient model. The market is telling you what a customer costs. So now you have to find a model that allows you to serve that customer. I hope that wasn't too combative.
So it's kind of looking at like repeat business or add-ons to your existing
Dude,
product
that's
that you
exactly
can
right.
offer to
And well,
them.
I mean, when I look at, I'm investing in businesses now and I'm trying to grow a portfolio of companies. And one of my rules for myself is I won't do anything that doesn't have a recurring revenue component or a consumable component, which is more or less recurring revenue. It's the opportunity to achieve recurring revenue. If you look at some of these, like somebody comes to me and says, I sell cell phone cases. You're like, well, good luck. Like you sell something that costs $20 uh, gross, right? What's your wholesale cost and shipping? And assuming you're paying for that, it costs $20. You make 5 maybe, and they buy from you once every 2 years if you're lucky. And why on earth would they really come back to you? And we're not even talking about the cost of traffic. So I love, high ticket's great, but even high ticket, there's feast and famine with high ticket. I love recurring. I love consumable. I love knowing that I'm paying for a customer one time that I'm going to have for a lifetime. And I think those are the models that I'd really niche down into and invest in. And to be frank, they're not inaccessible. You might think to yourself, well, I don't have a recurring revenue model. And my challenge to you is, could you? Could you have, a membership continuity offer? I mean, if you're selling something big, maybe there's something on the back end of it. If you're selling pencils, well, mechanical pencils need pencil lead. And you might think to yourself, well, pencil lead's not a sexy business. That's okay. Dollar Shave Club sold for $1 billion. Are razor heads sexy? No.
Nope.
$1 billion because it's a consumable. And they knew, and dude, I mean, they were selling those razors for $1. You think they were making their money on the front end? Hell no. Absolutely not.
Right.
But they had an efficient model and they knew on a long enough timeline, we're going to be able to recoup our costs. You have to be able to play that game from a cash flow perspective. But that's why knowing your numbers is so critically important.
Being the average Joe customer, I buy into that because if I go somewhere and have a good experience, I'm going to go back. And I don't care if it costs me a little bit more because it makes all the difference in the world. I have the confidence to go back there and I know I'm going to get what I want and I know I'm going to go back again as long as that I keep getting that same kind of return from them.
We are the
I
most
totally get
brand
that.
loyal generation in the history of humanity. I have no data to support that. That's my anecdotal observation. I just see it in
Oh
people,
yeah.
in customers, in clients, in my clients' clients, over and over and over and over again. We're not, in the 50s, 60s, and 70s, man, that was a price shopping generation. Those are people that you
Yeah.
could move with price. And now everybody's like, it's mission, vision, value, it's community, it's making sure it's brand. Obviously, the amount of money that people will spend for brand. I mean, Warren Buffett's made all of his money on the backs of brand. Warren Buffett
Yeah.
invests in brand. And he talks about it on an ongoing basis. I mean, Coca-Cola, one of his biggest holdings, Apple, one of his biggest, those are companies that all of their value is in brand. Like you could
Yep.
never, ever in a billion years make the case that Coke tastes billions of dollars better than the generic Costco
Yeah.
soda, right? You could, it's
In anything.
obviously, maybe it's like 10% better, but it's not, it's a $1
Yeah.
trillion brand, this damn thing. And so, yeah, we're a brand loyal, indoctrinated, uh, religiously committed, multi-generational society, and you can earn and keep that brand loyalty And dude, what's really funny is it's not even hard. Do good business in the right
Oh,
way
yeah.
with good people, like do the right thing. And every now and again, it's going to get a little like, oh gosh, we made a mistake. Let's go make it right. But the brands and the companies that do that, goodness, does it pay dividends?
I've driven Hondas nothing but for the last 25
Yeah.
years. I will always buy a
Yeah, Peter,
Honda.
you're very brand loyal. We always talk about that. You love your
Dude, I
Hondas.
drive a 40-year-old. I drive a Honda Prelude, a 1987 Honda Prelude.
Look at
Oh
that.
yeah.
Really? That is a classic.
Yeah.
I love that
That was
car.
my one dumb purchase. When I made my exit, everybody else goes out and gets themselves like a Lamborghini or whatever, and I just wanted. That was my car when I
Ferrari,
was a
yeah.
kid. So, yeah, I went and snacked
That's
up.
a beautiful thing,
Yeah.
man. Well, kind of talking
Awesome.
along those lines, that $30 investment, one of the things, when it comes to like bidding strategies, are there any things that you have in your tool belt that you use for bidding strategies?
What I'll say is, here's the problem: is if I tell you on this call right now today, you should be using, for instance, target CPA with no or TCPA. 24 hours from now, it's going to change. If I tell you use manual with enhanced enabled, the issue, Naval Ravikant says something that I really loved. He goes, I never give people advice on which stocks to purchase, because then I have to be their best friend for the rest of their lives and talk to them 24/7, 365 and tell them when to sell. Because if I tell you when to buy, I have to tell you when to sell. And so maybe what I'd like to do, and I'm sorry, you guys keep asking me questions that I don't answer, but I'll offer a philosophy that I hope answers the question instead. The bid strategy is less important than your positioning as it pertains to your competitors who are using that bid strategy. And I'm going to be more specific and less annoying. We were the first agency really to spearhead Performance Max. That's a fact. We're the first agency to make it work. We're the first agency to teach everybody how to use it. And Performance Max operates off of two bid strategies. And they expand because of the settings, but there's really two, right? It's TROAS, TCPA. Here's what's really funny is in an e-com campaign, you would assume, because it's e-commerce, you're going to use TROAS. The more people that were using TROAS, the harder that became. We switched to TCPA, and then we started teaching it. And then people switched over to TCPA. The more people that began using TCPA, the more commoditized that got. So then we switched to, and then we abandoned Performance Max entirely, and we switched over to standard shopping with manual bids. The key isn't finding the best bid strategy. The key is finding the bid strategy that nobody else is using, because Google's not on your side. My book is called You versus Google. Our mastermind is called You versus Google.
Right behind you.
Yeah. Number one in advertising and marketing worldwide. No big deal. And I'm only being mildly arrogant because I didn't really write that book.
Humble flex. Humble flex.
You versus Google is based on the paradigm that all of Google's recommendations are flawed, because Google doesn't want you to win. Google doesn't want you to make money. They want to maximize the value of their inventory. Obviously, it's what I want to do. I want to maximize the value of my inventory. You want to maximize the value of your inventory. Google's a company like any other company. So imagine an auctioneer for a moment. This is a fun thought exercise. It's a fun way to think about Google. You imagine an auctioneer, and that auctioneer knows exactly how much money each person who is bidding on something is going to make off of it. They know everybody who's willing to bid. They know exactly what those people are willing to pay. And they know, historically speaking, how the competition is going to shift over time. You couldn't trust that auctioneer, right? That's price fixing by definition. There's no trusting. So the key there is to not play the auctioneer's game. So if you guys are all smart bidding on manual, if you all move manual, I go smart. So be really careful anytime you hear thought leaders are like, oh, no, we use this tactic. Well, now you do, and it's going to work for 48 hours. Instead, and I'm stealing this from my buddy Jason Fladlin. Jason and I are business partners in the Driven Mastermind. Super, super brilliant guy. Wrote a phenomenal book called One to Many. If you watched, did y'all watch Alex Hormozi's book launch?
I did
Dude,
not.
that
Didn't get
was
a
the
chance to
marketing
know.
Super Bowl. That was the best thing that's ever happened in the marketing world. Jason helped
I'll make a
Alex
note.
plan that. Like Alex paid Jason for consulting, multi-day, to sit down and go through it. Like Jason's one of the smartest marketers in the world, as evidenced by the fact that one of the best marketers in the world hires him for consulting. And Jason all the time will just denigrate the idea of like split testing, for instance. Jason's like, look, you split test red versus blue and red won. Great. 6 months from now, if I try blue, blue will win. And Jason's real thesis seems to be, and I'm distilling this, he hasn't said this outright, but I've been on enough calls with him. We do, a call every Wednesday with our mastermind members. Just go against the grain. Go against the crowd. That's, good marketing sometimes is just standing out. It's just Seth Godin's purple cow. Everybody's facing north. You face south. And now all of a sudden, if I'm looking at this crowd, whose face do I see? Right? I see 999,000 back of the heads, and then I see one face. So bid strategy, bid caps, messaging, funnels, offers, so much of it is just be unique, stand out, do something different. Don't allow yourself to be commoditized and fall into the grooves.
Okay. That's amazing advice. We ask these questions, and not only are you answering them, but you're just giving like all this motivation, and so we definitely appreciate it. In the spirit of marketing and kind of a pivot, we did mention that we would kind of talk briefly about AI, right? So I definitely wanted to kind of yeah, right. Skynet, right? So I just kind of wanted to pick your brain in terms of like what trends you're seeing with AI, especially when it comes to like how it's reshaping industries. What how we're seeing certain businesses adopt it, and like what you're seeing in the marketing field.
My just to define terms, let's say, and set the stage so we're all operating from the same plane of thought.
Okay.
My philosophical belief of regarding AI, which I think is important to the discussion, I've never been more optimistic about humanity ever. I'm a card-carrying prepper. I'm sitting 15 feet from a closet that has a year's worth of food in it. Like I believe in being prepared for who knows what. And if you look at AI, one of the most important economic factors, period, full stop, is energy. Right? I mean, that's why the petrodollar is basically supported just by oil, and there's a whole bunch of implications to that. But if you look at the generation and distribution of energy, if you look at supply chain issues, if you look at the fact that we're about to have a population crisis and the distribution of resources based on that level of analysis, education, communication, AI, and this is the other thing, this isn't a hyperbolic statement. That's what's so amazing about it. AI solves all of that in probably 20 years. Like give robotics time to catch up and solves every problem we have in 50 years, but it solves these massive, and as far as humanity is concerned, these are lifelong problems. These are problems that humanity's had since the beginning of humanity. And AI can, will, and does, like there's evidence of this, solve these problems. And so
solve it.
Here's why I say that. Here's why I preface with that, which I know is annoying. Approach AI with optimism. Because I think that AI can only make things better. The key there, though, is it's a tool. It's not autonomous yet. I mean, maybe it will be. I don't know. I don't know enough about it. And it's a tool that we have been using publicly for like 5 years. Google search is AI driven. So this whole ChatGPT came out and everybody saw an interface and like, oh my God, AI just launched. No, it didn't. You've been using AI for the last decade. Anytime you engage with Google, that's AI. Anytime you engage,
AI.
Dude, Google Ads has been AI driven. Facebook, the algorithmic display of content based off of your utilization, demographic, psychographic profiling factors, that's AI. We've had AI. We've been using AI. We've been exposed to AI. We've been profiled by AI. We've been engaging with AI. We've been talking to AI. Like AI has been a thing. Somebody just gave you a little window that allowed you to talk to it, and all of us flipped our shit. So AI is not new.
Everyone's losing it now.
Yeah, I do think AI is going to cost a ton of jobs. I mean, OpenAI, the company that owns ChatGPT, did the largest study of universal basic income ever conducted. There's a reason for that. You take some of the smartest people in Silicon Valley with the most money and the most visibility as to what's going to happen, and what do they choose to waste their time on? a study on universal basic income like that, obviously they're like, okay, guys, hey, we're gonna cause a ripple and we're gonna want to be able to solve it. But I don't think it's blood in the streets, catastrophic error. I think it's paradigm shift. And for marketers specifically, I'd be really careful about resting on your laurels. What I'm hearing and seeing, I just did a perpetual traffic podcast interview with Ryan Dice, who's one of the smartest marketers alive, right? Like, obviously. And I think that goes without saying at this point. Like, he's just achieved that sort of legend status. And the thing that Ryan said that resonated so deeply with me was, if you look at the core facets of marketing, the most important facet of marketing is messaging. Period, full stop. Like, fulfillment's commoditizable, systemizable, automated. Funnels, traffic, even, I'm a traffic guy, media management, buying, bidding. It's messaging. Messaging is the thing that's A, the most important, and B, the most human. Here's what's really funny. People are, the first thing they're trying to abdicate to AI is messaging. The very first. Now, part of that is a byproduct of the fact that the tool that was given to us was a messaging tool. Had we been given a governance tool first, or a creative like Midjourney first, maybe the conversation would be a little bit different. But regardless of the why, they're trying to abdicate messaging. What's interesting about that is, while the AI tool can accomplish tasks better than a human can, it's trained on the aggregate average. And if you go, I just did this. I was invited to speak at an event. They asked me for a title, and I went to ChatGPT and I asked it to give me a title based on my parameters. And then I had to spend 20 minutes workshopping the title. Now, what I finally landed on, I thought was phenomenal. But ChatGPT didn't give me a phenomenal output. I had to use it as a tool in order to get, yeah, exactly. I had to tweak it. Right. So it was a great resource, but if I'd relied on it for the creativity, the guidance, really understanding, what do people want to hear? What should my message be about? What are the key takeaways and the points? What are they going to walk away knowing? It would have been garbage. It would have been distilled garbage. And what's funny is everybody right now seems to be heading in that direction. They're not hiring content writers. They're firing them. They're like, oh, we'll just use ChatGPT. It's no big deal. Write your book with ChatGPT. Write your blogs with ChatGPT. And what's funny about that is, it's not going to make content creation easier. It's going to make it more important. It's going to make good content writers more potent. That title I came up with, I did in 20 minutes with ChatGPT, probably could have taken me a couple hours, just to sit there and think. But I had this fun little AI bot to think with. So if you look at AI as a powerful, powerful tool that can assist you, your employees, your staff, like, I think you're walking into an enabled future. If you look at it as a full-scale replacement, we might get there, but we're not there yet. We're sure as shit not there yet. And you're going to get hurt.
Question for you.
Go ahead.
Pardon me. Talking about the AI piece and your use of it. One of the videos that you posted on YouTube, you talked about using AI to put, perhaps it was a contract. You were looking at some real estate, I believe, in North Dakota.
Yep, I buy all my houses in Fargo. That's the prepper in me, Peter. I got 20 doors in Fargo. If you look it up, Fargo, North Dakota is the number one most recession resilient piece of land. Let's say recession resilient city in the continental United States.
Yep.
So, sorry, keep going.
So you using that tool, then how much time do you? I mean, I'm guessing it saved you tons of time trying to review the document. You dumped that into, what was it, myaskai.com?
Yeah, something like that. I even forgot the URL now. It's funny, you know it better than I do. But for anybody listening, there's a real estate contract that was way too long, and there's this really phenomenal AI tool that actually my VA found me online. That it will scan basically any PDF document and then synthesize it for you, synergize it, let's say, and then it gave me the bullet points.
That was really cool. I was really impressed when I was kind of going through doing a little bit of my homework. It's like, first of all, I know Fargo pretty well. My mom's from North Dakota.
Oh, cool.
And so that kind of captured my attention.
Yeah.
So I was kind of curious to follow up on that as well.
Dude, I love Fargo. I love the whole of the Midwest. I think that's still the heartland as far as I'm concerned.
Midwest is a great.
But think about that example. That AI, it didn't tell me once it gave me the highlights of the contract. Like, are these terms good? Are they bad? Which of these bullet points do I negotiate on? Which of them do I not? Which, where's the pitfalls? What am I worried about? How does this max up against the rest of my portfolio? Et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So the AI didn't do the real estate transaction for me, right? I'm buying a small apartment building. There's I need to know, is somebody buying multifamily units? I need to know multifamily. I need to know syndication. I need to know terms. I need to know interest rates. Like there's all this stuff that I still need to know. And
Yeah.
anybody who wanted to just rest that contract at the feet of AI, they're going to get screwed if they try to do that.
Yeah.
So great
Yeah.
tool, but it's a tool and a resource. It's a tool on your tool belt. It's not like a replacement for a full scale entity or person or
Right.
thought.
Right.
Yeah.
I think a
I
lot
love
of
that
people are
answer.
going down that path thinking that exact same thing. It's like, well,
That's
AI is
right.
going to take care, it's going to get rid of everything. I'm
see
going
it
to be
every
out of a
day.
job. My family's going to be out of a
Yeah.
job. I'm going to
That's
be
right.
out of my house.
I see it in my clients. My
So
clients are like
yeah.
letting good people go, thinking like, oh, we'll just use AI. And in some ways it's working. You know, like we've got a client that I'll try to veil their identity so they don't hear this and get pissy at me. But they have a significant number of products, and they had a graphic design team that was taking those products and then putting them in specific contexts, because it's really helpful for, especially for display advertising, to see your product in use. And they didn't need the design team because they were able to figure out how to do that with various tools. I don't think Midjourney did it as well. I forget which one they're using, but one of those visualization tools. They basically automated the entire process. And you look at it and you're like, yeah, that really kind of works. But what we're running into now is all of a sudden, for the first time in a year and a half, they're getting compliance issues. And they're getting compliance issues because Google doesn't like showing body parts, even like a full thigh, even like there's a lot of just triggers that a person can be taught and knows, and the AI can be taught over time. But again, that's where we get into that, hey, there was a middle ground here and you missed it. Maybe having half the team to
Yeah.
monitor, review, and approve these images and teach the AI how to improve upon them,
Instead of
like,
letting everybody go.
wholesale axe the
Yeah.
world, and then you just got one poor guy there that there's too many images for him to look over.
Yeah,
So it sounds like there's still obviously a need for that human interaction. Like, so there's not going to be blood in the streets, just like you mentioned, right? Everyone can relax. You know, there's got to be some sort of happy medium where we can still use this powerful tool. It's not going to replace everyone's jobs, right? That's kind of the mindset you're in.
I think that there will be significant shifts in where labor is required. You know, I mean, the obvious and easy example is Uber and Lyft. Uber and Lyft are together the largest employers in the United States outside of the U.S. government, if they're allowed to be considered employers, which is something that they're fighting really hard. Autonomous vehicles are now, and they don't need to sleep. And they don't make mistakes. You know, what if 40, 50,000 people a year die in car accidents? If we had 100% autonomous vehicles, that number would probably drop to like 7, right? Adjusted, like there'd be some anomalies, but you'd save lives, you'd save money. 99% of cars are at stasis at any given time. You're only using your car for like about an hour a day, even if you're a heavy commuter. So I think autonomous vehicles are the only thing stopping them is legislation. The only thing, I mean, they're already technologically capable. They're already more efficient. An autonomous vehicle, even though it's a little bit more expensive, is less expensive than a normal vehicle and a driver and insurance and liability. They're more fuel efficient, obviously. And if you could pool people together from a resource management perspective, imagine a vehicle that was separated into pods. And it's like, dude, these 4 people are all going generally in that direction on a daily basis because they have the same commute paths. Instead of 4 different vehicles, I just put you into one, but with enough separation that it's comfortable, because we don't like being close to other humans for whatever reason. So if that takes place, and I can't see a future where it doesn't, every Uber and Lyft driver is out of a job. So are truck drivers, taxi cab drivers, school bus drivers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Right. Now, I don't want to say that that's not a problem, because it is. And from an industry specific perspective, it's just like manufacturing leaving the United States when it did. It's like any other shift. I don't think we're looking at a John Steinbeck novel where there's, roving bands of graphic designers crawling the streets begging for, we'll work for a sandwich. But I do think that people should pay very close attention to where labor markets move, and don't get romantic about how they make their money. The counter argument to the Uber and Lyft discussion is the fact that I can't walk into any retail strip and not see now hiring signs at like $25 an hour. It's unbelievable. My freaking grocery store, dude. It's like my grocery store is hiring baggers at $25 an hour, or stalkers. And there's a bunch of things till robotics catch up. There's a bunch of things that, like, that's more or less analogous to an Uber and Lyft job.
Exactly.
Hopefully it doesn't sound dismissive. So I won't say that there aren't going to be disruptions. I think there are going to be disruptions, but I think AI is going to help more than hurt. And the people that it hurts, sadly, and we don't have to have this discussion if you don't want to, but it's going to be emerging nations. Like that's always where most of the pressure is felt, is at the bottom. And so if we need to mitigate risk and help anybody, those are the people that we should think about helping.
Talking about the autonomous vehicles, I've been somewhat apprehensive about that, just because in the early days it didn't seem like it was like really quite there. But my wife made a very good point to me. She goes, "I look forward to that day because look at the other people on the road. Look at all the distracted drivers. Look at the people all looking at their phone as they're driving down the
It
road."
was terrifying.
And that's when I did a complete 180.
Yeah.
It's like, you are spot on correct.
Yeah.
I love driving. I love getting behind the wheel of a car and driving it.
Yeah.
It's the other people on the road that I worry about now.
Yeah. Well, and most people, they say that looking at your phone is worse than driving drunk. Because at least if you're driving drunk, you're paying attention.
So bad for you.
Yeah, because you're trying really hard to stay straight.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So I'm looking forward to autonomous vehicles too. And that's a fun lead domino to think about, because I forgot what the data point is. It's something like, even at the heaviest traffic, only 30% of the surface is covered. Which means, and that's just because we have to keep such a separation. If it's a computer driving, that separation isn't necessary. And so now traffic becomes more efficient, which means timelines become more efficient. You don't need massive parking garages. Homes don't need garages. You don't need all this huge driveway. You don't need, roads that are quite the same size. Like, there's all these things that we don't need. And so like just the garages, just to use that one example, what do we do with our garages? You've got every single family home in the continental United States has a 2-car garage. Now we have this excess real estate. Like, that's a fun business opportunity to think of. So now you're not an Uber and Lyft driver anymore. But what if you started a business where you convert garages to man caves? Hell yeah. Like, now we're cooking. This is fun. Like, that sounds like a blast.
I'm all for that.
Right? And people don't need the garage because they don't need the cars. So like, there's just a ton of, it's every shift, it's displacement. It's a law of physics. It's going to push things in other ways, and we're going to have opportunity, but you have to be receptive and open to it. And that is the thing that scares me. When I look at the labor market here, and I'm about to say a bunch of things that are going to get me canceled. When I look at the labor market here and I compare it to the labor market I see internationally, because I hire internationally a lot. I have 100 employees, and 80% of them are outside of the United States. The international labor market is more accessible, amenable, agreeable, a bunch of other $12 words, as it relates to being proactive, nimble, flexible, creative. Like, I've never heard an international employee tell me that's not my job. But the number of times, man, I love this country. My family goes all the way back to the 1600s. We're related to Thomas Jefferson. He wrote the freaking Constitution. I'm a red, white, and blue fan, but that means that I get to hold it to a standard. And the number of times I've heard a red, white, and blue telling me, "Oh, that's not my job. That's not my job description," or just, right at 5, clock out. Can't even get them on Slack. They're going to have a tough time competing in that space. So I think that we need to be a little bit more receptive to the idea that, hey, you just became really replaceable in certain industries. Let's start maybe paying attention to where the margin of improvement is. Yeah.
Okay. No, that's definitely something to think about. That again, just start to finish, really all of your advice and all of your feedback, whether we're talking about like Google ads and different strategies, and all the way through AI, right? Just different perspectives that you want to have. And, there's all these different thought processes, especially when it comes to AI, but, definitely great feedback, and we appreciate it.
To be respectful of everybody's time right now, we kind of lead into the exit here. So on that point right there, on one final note, are there any tips or tricks that you want the audience trying out heading into 2024? Anything advertisers should be aware of, focusing on?
I think that the new emphasis should be growing community. It used to be like, just give me a customer, and I'll take that customer and they'll give me money, and then I'll move on, and now give me another customer. And that assembly line model, it's so inadequate, and it puts you at this massive disadvantage. Instead of a customer, think of them as a new member of your community. And I don't care what you sell. You're like, I sell loose leaf tea. Great. This person's interested in loose leaf tea. You know a lot about them now. That's a lot to know about a human, right? There's a lot that you can infer there. And so how is it that you can draw them into your community, love on them, treat them like, make them feel like they're actually home? And you can do that with you can do that with SaaS. That's what you're doing on this podcast. podcast is a community. You're building a community. So businesses need to think about themselves as community, because with a community, when somebody's a community member, when you have a member base, that's a well from which you can draw on a frequent basis. When you just have a customer, there's not a lot of equity in that relationship. And I'm a paid traffic guy telling you that I don't think paid traffic is the way of the future. I think it's a tool. But the real emphasis should be on community building, which means really giving first. Community is relationships. Relationships are built on systems of reciprocity where you give first. Give first, give more, give last. And that's easy to do. You can do it on podcasts, YouTube channels, social profiles, obviously memberships, but build a community for yourself and for your business. And I think you'll see very quickly that it pays dividends.
That's beautiful, man.
Yeah. That community we could also apply to in places that we live. We need to rebuild some of our community.
Oh, dude, yeah. I think it's the tragedy of the Western civilization is that we've technologicized ourselves. I just invented that word. Technologized?
Yeah.
There we go. Technologized ourselves out of the need for human interaction, for community. Like community was such a necessity for so long, just for survival. And the minute we were in a position where we didn't need community to survive, we abandoned it. And now I think that's the one, like, dude, that's the hole in everybody's hearts. I'm in 4 masterminds. I own one of them. Like, why would anybody do that? It's because you're starving. You're dying for community. We're all dying for community. And in a lot of businesses, some are more set up for that than others, but every business in some way can feed that ethos.
Well said, man. So I think for all the listeners, everyone listening, you guys heard it, community, right? Just like you said, give first, give early, give often, right? That's definitely a great message. Whether you're a marketer, just like you mentioned, a SaaS company. And again, that's, a big reason of why we do this podcast, right? Is to build that relationship, share knowledge, and really continue to build our community. So, Kasim, this has been awesome, man. Is there anything that, speaking of community, right, that you want to plug when it comes to your community, whether it's your podcast, any type of services that you're offering, anything that you want to plug before we get out of here?
If you want Google Ads help, go look up Solutions 8. I think we're the best Google Ads agency in the world. I don't own it any longer, but I know, like, and trust the guys that bought it. I'm still the CEO of the company.
There you go.
I'm still a fan. I'm the co-host of Perpetual Traffic. I'm the co-owner of Driven Mastermind. We've got a great YouTube channel at Solutions 8, where we shoot a video every day. So it's pretty hard not to find me or engage with me on some level, assuming that you'd want to do that for whatever reason.
And is Postpartum Me still out there for sale?
Yeah, it's my little wife's book. My wife is a brilliant human, wrote a book on postpartum depression. And interestingly, she's about to potentially launch a community for expectant moms, to give them a place to go, and then B, also maybe a sense as to what to expect, because we still do a really bad job of that, which is funny considering that pregnancy might be the thing that humans have done the longest. There's still not as much support as there could be. So I appreciate you bringing that up, Peter. Thank you.
Awesome.
And I think
thank you, Kasim, man. It's been a pleasure. Yeah, man. Thank you so much. We appreciate you blessing us with the wisdom and knowledge here, and sharing and taking the time to chat with us today. Definitely look forward to chatting again. And for all the listeners, thanks for tuning in to the Smart Route podcast, and hope you guys have a great day.
Thanks, fellas.